Okay, guys, welcome to our Body Electric weekly webinar. Super excited to have Jackie tonight talking to us about inviting. I'm going to save all the weekly announcements just for that weekly announcements tab on our website, so I don't want to go through any of that here. If you guys ever have any questions about that, I know I've been getting questions recently about groups and that kind of thing. If you need to locate a group, it's been a while since some of them started, like 80 Day Obsession and 2B Mindset. For those of you guys who are either new to the business or you're wondering if we have a group for that, we do. So if you have a customer for something like that, make sure you reach out to your upline and ask how to be added. Otherwise, I'll leave the weekly announcements reading to you guys. Those are posted on Sundays. So Jackie, I'll let you take it away, my friend, and you can let us know if you want us to ask questions while you go or hop, if you want to do it at the end, you just let us know. So take it away.
All right. Feel free to ask questions, jump in, interrupt. That's fine. I was joking with my husband because like old Jackie would have had like PowerPoint slides and be all organized, and this is what we have today. So color coded, pretty. So I guess I'll start with the fact that I do not by any means consider myself to be an expert in inviting. I feel like I've just kind of gotten in my stride in the past couple of months. And so I'll share strategies I have, but I think a realization I've come to is like, I still don't feel like I'm really good at it or it's 100% comfortable, but because I have strategies for it, I have found that it's gotten more routine and it's gotten easier. And, I still have to use the 4, 3, 2, 1, hit send and then walk away sometimes. But here's kind of how I've broken it down. So I'm going to just kind of talk through some things, and then I'm going to attempt to share my screen and we'll see if that works. To show you just some screenshots I took from some conversations that I've had. So I've tried to break it down into 2 parts because for me, the biggest hurdle, and I think it was on a call we talked, I'm sure Jenny remembers too, me saying one of my biggest struggles last year at some point was like figuring out who to talk to, like who to reach out to. I spent a lot of time trying to just figure out who am I going to talk to. Most recently, Instagram stories has made that much easier for me. I think those of you who use Instagram, you know that you get a lot of views on your stories, and that immediately gives me a list of who to talk to. So like I said, first part is who to talk to. I go every day, at least once, to my Instagram stories, swipe up, go through that list of everybody who's looked at my story, and I try to place them into a category. Are they somebody I can connect with, I can invite, I can follow up with? And then I do that at least once or twice a day on my Facebook posts, just who's interacting. And then all the likes, not just comments, but mostly likes. And then just connections, people who've been previously interested. I'm kind of in the middle of figuring out how I want to best keep my list. I've used Teamsy for a long time. I've subscribed to Teamsy for a long time, but I haven't really been using it lately. And I think as I do more on Instagram, I'm not finding it as useful because it's my Facebook friends. So I'm taking a break from that and trying just an old school list for now. So people who are just on my list. And then I just try to always keep in mind, and I'll talk more about this when I get into how I invite, but like what I know about people, and just be constantly thinking, who would this be right for? And it may be somebody that but just kind of keeping that in mind. Katie said she's having trouble hearing me. Is anybody else having trouble hearing me?
It occasionally gets a little bit choppy, but okay. So far we're okay.
Stop me if it gets real bad. We have a big storm coming through, and I was afraid something like that might happen. So if it gets real bad, I'll use my phone. Let me know. So that's kind of part 1 is figuring out who I'm going to invite. And then part 2 is how to invite them. And that's kind of the piece that I really dug into this summer. So when I make those lists, I'll show you, let me see if this works. So somebody's going to have to unmute and tell me if they see my screen. Let's see. You see my Google Drive? Anybody? I can't see you anymore.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So let's see if it pops up. This is a little notebook. I'll show you it in a minute. And I think this was on somebody's call I don't use the same boxes, but I literally draw a quadrant every day. So this was my list Monday. And I carry this little notebook with me. It's always in my purse. So whether I'm stopped in a parking lot, if I'm at work on lunch break, at home, whatever, I can add names to it throughout the day. So people I want to connect with, people I'm going to invite, people I'm going to follow up with, and people I'm going to check in with, which are my current customers or challengers. So that's kind of how I organize my who list. And then if there's a check by them, that means I connected or invited, whatever. Sometimes you'll see in parentheses, I put like little notes about what I want to connect with or invite them to, because that doesn't happen until I get a power pocket or a power hour or some time to work. So I know you might have seen in the big thread that Jennifer and Jenny and I were kind of going back and forth. I'm trying to get 15 minutes in the parking lot, literally, before work and after work. And that's time in the morning, especially, I can add to these lists. And then in the afternoon, I can connect with people, or if I have time at night. So that is just how I organize things.
How do you differ?
Go ahead.
Sorry. What's your difference between your follow-up and your check-in? What's the difference between those two things?
Follow-up is people that I've invited before and I might want to touch back with, but they're not customers. And check-in are my current customers. So it's literally this size notebook. They're my favorite. I use them at work all the time too. And I just keep it in my purse. And then I throw away the page once I've written the names down in my other list. And I'm kind of done with that day.
What's your other list?
Like my master list that was on Teamsy and then went to a spreadsheet and now is in a notebook. So I'm still trying to figure out what works best for me in that way. But kind of if I follow up with somebody, but I don't invite them or they say no, I keep them in my big list because I'll come back to them. And that was, I think Sarah asked that question, so I'll come back to that one later too. And this goes back to something I said on one of the other recordings. I know when I'm and I'm not connecting with people, I get into the rut where I'm sitting there going, I have nobody to invite. And then I can immediately look at myself and say, well, I haven't been posting regularly, or I haven't been reaching out to people. So it's kind of that whatever you did in the past 90 days or 90 days ago is informing kind of the people that you have to talk to now. So I try to keep that in mind. Okay, so then step 2 is how I invite. And what's worked for me well is to kind of put people into categories and then base my invites around those categories. And I have some that are kind of ongoing, but my list of category builds as we release new programs or we come out with new things. So, you know, my first category is people I've had previous conversations with, I've invited previously. And then I have an invite for them that involves the phrase like, I didn't forget about you. Hey, this is coming up. I didn't forget about you. I'm going to share again. I use Google Keep all the time. And it's basic. Oh, let's see. Where are we? There we go. Let me know if you're not seeing my Google Keep. It's a purple Post-it note. So it says invites on it. And this is just an ongoing list that I keep. I'll show you some of the other ones, but I can more or less copy and paste it. I always personalize it a little bit. So like this one, people who like a ton of my posts, and I'll show you this one later. So I might say, hey, thanks for all the love on my posts. Give them something personal, like in here's where I'll insert like a personal connection to them, and you'll see that. So this is just kind of where I keep a bunch of my posts. So I have one somewhere. I'll show you the example later. But I would keep it in that list that would say, hey, this is coming up. I didn't forget about you. I know we talked before. So that's kind of my first category. Then this time of year, I have my teachers category. You know, I've kind of branded this one. I just said back to school, back to basics. You know, we're getting back into basic routines. So I have an invite stored that I use if I'm reaching out to teachers and talking about getting back into that routine. I reached out to everybody I know who's a nurse for list 4. As soon as Joel said that on the call, I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. I think I reached out to 6 nurses and 4 of them joined. The other 2 went on my follow-up list. But I have a whole in Google Keep, a whole list 4 note where, and I usually organize it kind of by program. So I have a list 4 note where I had my invites and then almost each step of the conversation, because at least I find myself, once they're interested, okay, what's my snippet that I'm going to share with them? So keeping those handy in Google Keep just saves a lot of time in the inviting. And I find I'm much more comfortable. I don't like to say it's just a copy and paste because I would put something in there that connects to that person. But having kind of my categories stored in there has been helpful. Another one that I have, and I'll go back to Google Keep for this one because I don't think I found a screenshot, was like my Fit Friends. This is a group that I just started reaching out to because frankly, I think I just always assumed that they weren't interested because they were already in this. But I had a conversation with a teacher friend recently, and she talked to me about how she kind of fell off the wagon over the summer. So at the bottom down here, that I'm sure you're already ... So this is where I just kind of reached out, just wanted to reach out. And I'm sure you already have a fitness plan rocking, but in case you need something started. So just using like those positive presuppositions. I'm sure that you already are training for something. I'm sure that you already have something going, but in case you're not, I want to reach out. And I think that it kind of just helps to build that relationship that they know I'm thinking of them. And well, I'm sure you're already doing it because you're awesome in my books. And a lot of them, I assume that they are. And if they're not, then it gives us a conversation point. And then just another category from somebody actually just brought this up today, I think, but is my runner friends, and I'll reach out to them with that half marathon training plan, especially springtime when runners really start training. So those are kind of the categories I break it into, and I'm adding new ones. Like I said, my nurses one and my people who are short on time one really came, when Lift 4 came out. I've really focused on like knowing what to offer. So what is a program that is new or that I'm really fired up about, designing the ideal challenger around that. And I just actually finished listening to this week's National Wake Up Call on my commute home, and she addressed that, just using the product toolkits and really knowing who is this for and putting all of my energy into inviting to that. I know we've kind of gone back and forth with inviting to multiple things, and we have all these groups going. And although I think that's great, and I know we have something for everybody, what I found personally is I can't keep up in the limited amount of time I have. I can't keep up with people in 6 different groups. And I had to kind of make that decision. I just invited somebody to our back to school group, and she was like, exercise is too much for me. I've been really focusing on nutrition. And I know the window and the door is right there for me to open to 2B mindset. But I also know that right now I cannot carry her on my own through that 2B mindset group when she's going to kind of be on her own because she'd be starting at a random time. So for me, I've chosen to really invite to one thing that I can put all my energy into. So all my energy is in my Lift 4 group right now. And if in a couple of months, especially like postpartum, I might want to do a big 2B mindset push, I'm going to come back and follow up with her. So even though it might be a good time for her now, I know I couldn't support her best in that 2B mindset group. So I'm not inviting to that right now, just because I did that a little bit when I think we had shift shop and 80-day obsession and that kind of stuff going. And I just started to lose people because I couldn't have enough energy for all the groups. So personally, I like to invite to one thing. And then design the ideal challenger. So if I'm inviting you to 21-day fix, I focus on my new people. If I'm inviting to shift shop, I really look for people who were looking for kind of that next step, serious results. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And so the other note just I had on that is when I think about my categories, I use that a little bit to inform my social media posts, but I think it took me long enough, but I kind of finally came to that realization that I can't rely on my posts. I could for like the first 6 months maybe, but I don't use those to make my posts as much as I do for the personal invites that I'm trying to write. So even though I'm all about, I'm sure you already have this going on, you're super fit, I'm not going to create a post about that. That's just kind of the angle that I use when talking to people. So that's kind of how I figure out who and how I figure out how. Does anybody have questions, things they want to add, anything that else that has worked for you? Anything? Can use my teacher wait time. Okay.
I don't have anything to add. I like what you've shared so far.
Well, thank you. Hopefully it's helpful. Like I said, it's all a work in progress, but it's I have to be organized or I won't do anything. So it's kind of figuring out that organization that's worked for me.
willing to share your scripts?
Yes,
So
I will. I was gonna say I will share those. I can post them in the team page too. I'm gonna go through now and just show you. I'm gonna share my screen, and I can share these screenshots too, so that you can have them. But I'm gonna talk through just some of the conversations that I've had recently using these categories. Some yeses and some nos, and hopefully that helps. And then, like I said, I'll share the screenshots so you guys can have them. Let's see. Okay. So here's I didn't forget about you. This was a script per se that I had in my Google Keep that I used for a lot of people who I had talked to before. Maybe they had said no to 80-day obsession, but whatever they had said, the reason that they had said no to me, whatever reason I got from them, implied, or I had a feeling that Lift 4 might be a better fit. So these were mostly people who didn't want that much of a commitment, were a little bit too busy, that type of thing. One other question that Jenny posted was looking at cold invites versus warm. And I don't feel like I do cold market often, like out of the blue reach outs. I did for a time, especially when there was that Carl group that was kind of pushing it, but it just made me feel weird. But I would consider this almost a cold invite because I've talked to her multiple times, but it had been a long time, and I don't really have a strong relationship with this person. I know her from my childhood. I actually saw her a couple weeks ago for the first time, and I think we figured almost 20 years. So I just kind of reached out. Hi, hope summer's treating you well. You're staying cool. Wanted to reach out. We've chatted in the past. I didn't forget about you. And that's where I kind of just went into a quick piece about Lift 4 without saying Lift 4, but giving the snippets. And this is one I've shared with the team before. I just wanted to invite you before I started making public invites. So that's something that I use a lot as well. And so here's just her response. Again, I just want to emphasize this is a person who I was kind of afraid to work out to because she told me no at least twice before in the past couple of years. She's a doctor. That intimidates me. But her immediate response was, I wouldn't mind a little more accountability. And so she said she'd be interested in doing something like that. And then so here's kind of just how I followed up. And she did end up joining our team. So she is in the Lift 4 group. So that's one, I didn't forget about you and kind of what that looked like. Let's see. So somebody who liked a lot of posts, that was another category I had, and I'm sure we've probably all done this, but somebody who just, is the one who's constantly liking your posts, never comments. So this is actually another girl that I'm totally intimidated by at work. And we've never talked in person about fitness. I work with her every day. I coach her at work. But she likes every single thing I post. So finally, I just wrote kind of the thanks so much for all of my posts. And so then I added a personal touch in the middle and just, if it'd be a good fit for you right now, I'd love to have you in one of my groups. So it's the first time I'd ever actually had a conversation with her about, I call them fit groups, about a fit group. She was one who was like, I love it, thanks, but no. But she's definitely going on my follow-up list. I feel like I've opened that door. We can have that conversation now online, but also I work with her every day in person. So that door is just kind of open now. Nurses, I know I shared some of the invite with you guys back when we were just recruiting for Lift 4. So this is one where she actually was in my 80-day obsession group. I was able, and I had reached out to her earlier in the year because she kind of fell off of 80-day obsession and she was a no. But I knew that she was a no because her nurse schedule was crazy. And so as soon as I reached out about Lift 4, just focusing on that schedule, because I knew that was the reason that she'd said no before, she immediately was interested learning more about it. I gave a super quick overview. I think that's something I shared with the team before. She already had Beachbody on demand, so we were able to chat about that. She's one I also know who canceled her Shakeology. I think she only did Shakeology for like a month, but she was super into Recover, and which I didn't even know, but she was wanting Recover. She actually just posted on Instagram today a picture of herself and her self-care journey holding her Beachbody shaker with Energize in it. And she's one who I follow up with regularly because I never hear from her. She never checks in the group. And so I was like, wow, I need to talk to you about coaching. You're sharing your story already. So again, that was just, I know she said no because of her schedule. This one worked for it. So that's why I chose to invite her to Live 4. Similarly, this was a teacher I taught with when I taught in Bloomington. He took my fitness class. Medically, he never stuck with it really. So he was one I was like, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to him because I knew he was into weightlifting. This is Lift 4. I thought for sure he would not be interested at all. I was like, he won't spend the money, da, 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 but I finally convinced myself to send it. And immediately he was like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm doing, let me see if I can get the second one. But it's very similar to another post that I shared in terms of the language. He immediately followed up, where is it? Oh, my computer's slowing down. Can I get in here? Anyway, he immediately followed up with, oh, I just dusted off my P90X last week. And he's got DVDs. And so we were just talking about that. And he ended up 2 days later saying, actually the conversation continued. He asked about price, which was my biggest hesitation, which is something I'll talk about in a minute. And he was like, oh, that doesn't seem bad at all. And I was like, what? But then he decided not to do it with school starting. But he's still somebody who I've opened that door with. So just wanted to show you some of those, I think. One other thing I'll get into next, just some tips, more lessons that I've learned. I talk too much. I know that. I try to write down my responses and then shorten them. This I might have shared with the team too, but it was my quick version. Anybody who expressed interest in Lift 4, hey, here's my quick version. Excuse me. So I tried to just really short and sweet, break it up with, so it's not in kind of long paragraphs, but that is.
Wait, can you pull that back up one more time real quick?
Sure.
I love that because I love the spacing between everything, and I just think it's readable. You guys know when you get a message from somebody, if it's just a big chunk of text, you're not going to read it. I like that you incorporated the emojis. I like that you even said, here's the quick version. I like that it's sort of just like almost like a bulleted list with the spaces. So totally detail oriented on my part, but that's something I wanted to call out.
Thank you. And that's really what I know about myself, right? I'm an English major. I'm a writing teacher. Like, I know this is my problem, that I too much. So that's something that I try to really write something out, and before I click send, go, how can I shorten this? And I do the same thing when I write emails at work all the time because I'm wordy. For example, this just happened to me yesterday. I had somebody who, again, totally intimidates me. I had reached out to about coaching a while back because she quit her job, I noticed. She actually wanted to call me, talk about it. We had a phone call about it. She decided to go pursue coaching through like integrated health. So she's actually getting a certification in nutrition. I was like, awesome. We follow each other's journey. She texted me the other day and was like, what's this 4-day-a-week thing that you're doing? I want to learn more. So I started to text her back and I started to type, and I realized I was typing out what I've done hundreds of times. Every detail about a challenge pack. Here's what a challenge pack is. And I was like, stop. You talked to her on the phone for like 20 minutes and just tried to ask questions. So I just said, hey, have we talked about a challenge pack? And she was like, yeah, we did talk about that. Awesome. Move on. She ended up signing to join the Lift 4 group. And I think that I can turn people off by typing too much. And it's something that I think was fresh in my head because now I'm back in school. I'm an instructional coach at school. We've just gone through all of this, like, stop talking, listen and ask questions. So if you're a paragraph typer like me, I found just stopping, deleting everything I wrote and figuring out how can I ask a question, which I think we all know, but that's just something I have to constantly remind myself of. That one also kind of leads into the other lesson I've learned, and Jenny addressed this in her webinar recently. I let my hesitation about the money dictate my biggest fears about inviting. Like, I'm afraid that, like I told you about Steve, the one I shared the invite, I was for sure, he's not going to want to spend, like, I know this guy, he's not going to want to spend the money. And he's one who I was shocked when he was like, oh, that's not bad. That seems reasonable. I've also stopped, I think Sarah and I might talk about this, or somebody, this came up. I've stopped including, I don't include a price unless somebody asks me how much it costs. It shocked me this summer. I would say probably a third of my new challengers never asked me once about the price. That flat out shocks me. But money is something that's on my mind all the time, and it's something I worry about all the time. So I think it's natural for me to not only say how much it is, but then justify it somehow. I'm the queen of justifying anything. So that's something that I've been working on. Again, like talking to a friend and rewriting. I know we also, I feel like a lot of this is review, so I hope there's something new in there. But something we also talked about recently is what posts get traction for you. Like I said, right now, my 2-year-old is way cooler than me. So posting things about her, posting videos of her, posting pictures of her doing things, get way more traction than any type of post that I do about myself. And again, I'm more so looking for the likes and the comments to figure out who to start those conversations with. So those get more for me. Somebody had a call a while back, I think it was a National Wake Up Call, where she was like, figure out what your peanut butter is, because she's always talking about her obsession with peanut butter. And for a long time, my peanut butter was my dog. Like, my dog did funny things, and I could do pictures of my dog and everybody loved it. And now it's my kid. And so it's changing, but sweaty selfies get me nothing. Like, the first 5 I did with this huge belly doing workouts got some good likes and stuff like that, but people have seen that now. So kind of figuring out what's going to get interaction so that I can build that list is something that I'm just kind of changing up. And then the other piece, and this again was on a National Wake Up Call recently, when somebody says no, really figuring out why they said no, because then they're in my list of follow-ups. So when something like Lift 4 comes up, I can do that. Other people have still said no because they don't have time or whatever. I know this 20-minute workout is coming in January. Not to mention, I taught step aerobics for a decade, and I'm super excited he's bringing the step back. All my step aerobics people are getting an invite. So just keeping those things in mind.
Did you guys see, by the way, sorry, but did you guys see on Instagram Sean T's slow-mo video of his tricep push-ups on that step? Anybody see that? I watched that like a cat watches a laser. I watched it for like 20 minutes, like just watching him slow motion tricep push up on that block, dreading every moment of Transform 20.
I'm gonna cry. The brown lower my tricep push-ups are like on the wall and they hurt.
I almost hit the floor. My face almost hit the floor during Lift 4 chest and tris this week. Like, I almost couldn't hold myself up. That's the first time that's ever happened for me. Real quick before you move on, I just wanted to say that when you were talking about, let me see if I can remember what I was going to say. When you were talking just a couple points ago about what attracts people on your social and kind of creating that brand in addition to the invitations, it made me think about the fact that, you're saying like, oh, pictures of Holly tend to draw more, attention or whatever. Well, there's a book out there called Contagious. If you guys haven't read the book Contagious, I can't think of the guy's name that wrote it, but it's all about what makes things go viral, and very similarly, what creates a good brand, right? Like, what types of things create a good brand. And basically the long and short of it is that emotion and personal connection and things that relate with the everyday person is typically what draws people to you. So it makes sense that when you were sharing about your dog, everybody who, I think I've heard the analogy of like, if you saw a picture of an old man's hands, and there was a story about a father and his hands, the first thing you're going to think about is your father's hands. And there's going to be like an emotional connection to the fact that you feel the same way, right? And so the same thing goes for this. Like, when you post pictures of your kids doing something or doing something with your kids or your dog or whatever, you're connecting with a certain audience that resonates with that. And so I just wanted to just kind of offer a little bit of a deeper insight there that it totally makes sense. Like, not that we don't necessarily want to see your baby bump working out, but maybe, people that are following you, maybe they didn't work out during pregnancy, or they don't work out during pregnancy. And so that might not resonate as much with them. as seeing you do push-ups with your daughter or something cute like that, where you're setting the example and they kind of make that connection there. So just something for everybody to be thinking about here, regardless of whether you have kids or not or whatever. Like for me, you know, Rudy was like the center of my social media forever. And then when we adopted Ellery, I started getting messages from people that were like, where's your dog? Like, is Rudy okay? And to this day, still, I get messages from people who are like, why don't you ever talk about Rudy? I have to like intentionally remember to post about Rudy too. But it's just because of the brand that I had built up about my dog and now my kids. So that is totally, totally relevant. And I just wanted to draw more attention to that.
And on that, I have to say, when you posted the video of Ellery running to meet Chris when he came home from school on the first day, I was like, oh my gosh, there's Rudy. He's there too. I had that same thought. Like, we haven't seen him.
I know my mom, who's totally not a dog lover at all, she's like, did you see all those people that commented on your video about that dog? I'm like, yes, Mom, they all love
the following.
Yeah.
All right. So
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like you have a pretty large network of people that you can reach out to. Did that take time to grow, or are these people that you work with and people that you have contact with? Is how do you know these people?
I feel like it's not large. I have a lot of weaknesses. One of my current biggest weaknesses, I would say, now I'm just speaking of all of my weaknesses, the list is so long, but one of them is definitely building my network. Like, I don't feel like I'm strong at that. I don't add new, I was talking to Jennifer about this not too long ago. I think, like, when you go to find friends on Facebook, mine are all Beachbody coaches. That's all that's left. Like, I don't have a lot of people there. I joined groups for a while, but I felt like the creepy person friending people in groups. So really the people that I'm reaching out to are people I do know personally from somewhere recently, more of my husband's coworkers. So I do have probably 5 or 6 people who joined this summer who are my husband's coworkers who I've never met, but by tagging him in some of my posts, whether he's there or not, it reaches that audience. So I feel like mine is still, it's very personal. So that's kind of like I said when Jenny posted that question about cold market versus warm market. I did a few of the like, hey, this seems out of the blue, but I'm like, this just feels icky, so therefore it is. So I don't know. I guess I don't feel like it's that big, but it is definitely people that I know. The majority are people I know from somewhere, not necessarily that I've talked to in a long time, but they're people who are interacting with my posts on Instagram or Facebook, which some are from work for sure. A lot are just acquaintances, whether it's from college or high school, is probably more so. And then, you know, this is my 3rd school district I've worked in, so I have found like that does help expand the network a little bit, but that's definitely not somewhere I feel super strong in terms of expanding my network. Like adding 5 friends a day, I don't do. It doesn't happen. I won't lie about that. I'm also have not capitalized on that Instagram cold market hashtag business yet. It's one of those things that's like on my list, but not a priority item for me right now, is really figuring out and using hashtags, because I swear every time I use a hashtag, I have more people who look like Coach me. So I haven't figured that out yet. I will, but I don't know. So that probably isn't a very helpful answer at all.
No, it totally is, because it's helpful. As a stay-at-home mom now, and in the industry that I worked in before, I don't have a lot of people that are like, hey, I need to focus on my health. They're more focused on, I want to work my night shift and go out cocktailing after. So I'm at the process of like trying to reconnect with people, and my high school days are so hazy that I feel odd talking to these people. So that's why I've started doing some more like personal posts as of late, because when those people come out of the woodwork, I feel like I have something I can talk to with them that shows like, hey, I know you, but I really don't remember a whole lot. So it is and it is helpful to know that you don't have like this huge network of people that you're having these conversations with. It's a close knit of people that you know. You're just capitalizing on reaching out to them and building those relationships.
Yeah, I think that really sums up a lot of it, because I've had a lot of those feelings for different reasons, but still with high school, like I didn't, like, you were a popular kid. I was the biggest dweeb in high school. Like, didn't know you, didn't never talk I've never talked to you in high school, but just making those connections. And for me, frankly, a lot of them start with liking their posts and then commenting on their posts, and then maybe finding something I can message them about. Again, like Jenny talked about, I remember the dinosaur pajamas or whatever, that type of thing. Just finding something to kind of comment on and connect. And I was actually scrolling through my Facebook Messenger, pulling screenshots for this. And I was like, oh, wow, I connected with like all these people and none of them responded at all. But they saw it, maybe, hopefully. And that kind of transitions, actually. I was going to go into some questions next that were in the group, and I saw Laura's question. When you respond to Instagram story views, do you usually DM on Instagram or Facebook? So one thing that, as I've done more and more on Instagram, I realized I totally forgot today. I have those days anyway. People on Facebook Messenger, when there's in the message and it was checked with open circle, meaning they never read it, a lot of those people, I have had success starting to do more direct messaging on Instagram. So people who I find on my Instagram stories, if I've talked to them previously in Facebook Messenger and I can see their picture by my message showing me that they have seen my message, I'll probably continue the conversation there. If they haven't seen my message or I haven't talked to them on Facebook Messenger, I use the Instagram Messenger. It's actually really
That makes
good.
sense.
Limit your characters. You can't write as much on Instagram. It's great for me.
The reason I asked too is I actually had somebody the other day that I reached out to from stories, and she's somebody I've known for a really long time, but she didn't even know how to use Messenger in Instagram. So I'm sure she's not the only person, and she commented on my story, but she didn't know how to get back in and respond to a message. So yeah, that's why I asked.
Some of my mom's friends that I've reached out to, I've like gone to send them a Facebook message and realized I've sent them like a message every 6 months for the past 2 years and they have not seen any. I'm like, oh, you don't use Facebook Messenger.
Right.
So some of those I try to just comment on their posts and kind of start a conversation there. I don't have their email, I don't have their phone number, and they don't use Messenger. So I'm kind of like, well, some of them I see in person occasionally, and so try to bring it up, but that's about it. And then
Good idea.
Find a customer on Instagram, how do you move them to a Facebook group? So far, mine are all really warm market people, even on Instagram, so I know them, and I have not had any issues with them not having a Facebook account to like not join a group. I've only had one challenger ever who didn't have Facebook, and I happen to be running in my challenge tracker group, so she joined that. But I haven't run into that problem, Kate. But I think the people who I have talked on Instagram, I've said I run this through a virtual Facebook group, and nobody's ever said like, oh, that won't work for me. So, I mean, that's the way I introduce it, I guess, is just that's where the group is. I just have a personal thing against my challenge tracker. It's not my favorite, but I've still run tons of groups over there. But I know now the next group I'm inviting to is Facebook. I just make sure that I bring that up. Other questions? I kind of feel like I tried to answer the cold versus warm market one, Jenny, that you asked. Well, I guess the other piece I had on that, like I said, I very rarely do totally cold market. For me, a cold market invite is somebody that I haven't talked to, maybe I've not met, not talked to in a long time, but kind of my rule of thumb is I need to know enough about you to put you in a category, one of my categories. I need to know enough about you to say, you're a nurse, this might work for you. You're a teacher, this might work for you. You're a mom of 4 young children, you might be busy, you might want like 4. Like, so before I'll invite somebody, I have to know enough about them to know some sort of need and kind of get them in a category. So I guess what I'm thinking of is cold market, I don't really do. Katie asked about, what do you call groups? I call them fit groups. That's just in my invites, I call them fit groups. So somebody asked, you might have been Michelle in the group, about when you invite somebody in follow up, how long do you wait kind of before inviting or following up again so that you're not bombarding them? Which I've thought about a ton. I think my answer, which sucks, is it depends on the person. Generally, and Teamsy kind of started me on this, because if you could market in Teamsy, or I think they automatically brought people up like every 90 days roughly. So roughly every 3 months, I might send another invite. But for me, it really depends. Why did they say no? And when does something come up that would give them a solution to the problem that they had? So the nurse that I showed you, she did 80-day obsession. She really struggled because she was working night shifts, but we got her in the night shift group. Like, she got through it. She more or less completed the program. She had stopped her Shakeology. I reached out to her to try another group. No, my schedule's too busy. No, my schedule's too busy. I invited her. I was just looking in the conversation when I got those screenshots. January, I think, was the first time, or December, I'd invited her. She got into 80-day. I talked to her again in like March. I had invited her like 3 or 4 times, and she kept telling me no. So she's one who I had talked to more, because I knew fitness and weight loss were really important to her, yet she had this excuse about being too busy. So as soon as LaFour came out, I invited her again, because I knew it kind of hit her pain point. Whereas somebody else, I would not have invited 4 times in a row if I didn't know that they really wanted this and know what their roadblock was. So I think inviting, my general kind of rule of thumb is roughly 3 months, but not if I don't have something good that I think is a good fit for them. The thing I've been working on with my list and organizing, though, is to make sure that I'm still interacting with those people. So especially, I try to, like, if you say no to an invite, within the next day or 2, I'm going to positively interact with you on social media. Like, I'm not just going to hide. So you said no to me, and the next day I'm going to like your post. And 2 days later, I'm going to comment how cute your kid is. And just kind of keep building that relationship. On the wake-up call, I was listening to my drive home today, which I also take notes in my notebook while I'm driving. It's awful. They're really fun to try to decipher later. But she said she had heard something like 12 times exposure. Like, you have to be exposed to something 12 times before you're going to be interested by it. Same thing like when we're teaching kids, we have to teach them it 7 times. So just thinking, like, before I invite you again, have I touched base with you like 12 times or 10 times or 5 times at least? I have not read the Gary Vaynerchuk book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, but I keep hearing about it. So I feel like I at least know what that means. And so that's really been one of my focus points lately with my posts, because the busier I get, the less I post, which means the fewer people I have to invite. So I've tried to really use my planner to say, okay, what are my 3 jabs or my 3 values going to be before I invite? So how am I adding value in my post? And so I try to keep the same thing in mind. If you say no to me, but I know kind of why you said no, I can use that to help me as I connect and add value to you, so that we're still talking regularly or interacting, so that if I do come at you in a couple of months because something's coming out and I think it's great for you, it's not like I haven't talked to you since you said no to me. So hopefully that makes sense. The last question that was on the group was, how do you transition from forming to inviting? Which I know is a question that I've asked Jenny or asked on the webinar before, but I realized I have had a lot of those conversations lately. Probably my number one go-to is ask about, like, oh, have you been able to keep active this summer, or somehow throw the word active in there, or if I know they're a foodie, asking them for recipes, sharing recipes, or when they ask about me, bring that in to some sort of connect as well. So I share my screen one more time to a couple of those conversations I've just had lately. So this was somebody who responded. She's a teacher that I worked with in Indiana. She is a runner. She's always been kind of active, but I don't know what she's up to these days. She took my fitness classes, but I have no idea what she's been doing. She replied to my kid doing yoga story. Just that's impressive, probably better than I can do. So just continuing to form. I have not invited her. I don't know if I've ever invited her, but it's been a long time if I have. I don't remember ever inviting her. So I just said she watches everything. The show Sponge. How'd the first few days go? Because they just started school. They're tough. How are your kids? I actually teach teachers now. I don't teach kids. I said I have some tough teachers. Today's District Institute. So then I just kind of threw in, what are you doing to stay sane? Are you still running? Because I knew that she was a runner. She's still running. They drink and run, which sounds fantastic. And then I just told her I miss running and alcohol, both true stories. But I'm glad I've been able to stay active this whole pregnancy, but nothing like running. So then we kind of just transitioned that conversation to talking about staying active. Like I just continued. I don't really think it's that hard, but because I have these habits in place, pretty fit when I got pregnant, I go nuts, and it helps that it's my job. I've got to keep up with my fit group. So just kind of dropping those seeds about here's what I'm doing. And so then she actually, I said, it helps with my motivation and accountability. Again, all true things. And that's when she said, maybe school will help with more routines and accountability for me. So that was kind of the door open, like you need some routines and accountability. I just dropped at the end of the conversation, like my next group is all about that. If you're interested, let's chat. She's not responded to me at all since, I mean, it was late at night, we were having a conversation. She hasn't responded to me at all, but I know now that that once again, that door's been open. So it's kind of how I went from just having a conversation with her, forming. She is somebody who I have a relationship I taught with years ago. But I've done a lot of forming with her over the past couple of years, constantly checking in. How's your summer? How's your travels? Where are you going? But this is really the first time we've gotten into talking about an invite. Another one, maybe. Let's see who's gonna go. There we go. So this is another girl, a friend of a friend in college. I don't really know her personally, but she's been liking a lot of my posts lately, and she just posted this crazy story about her husband being in the hospital. So I just kind of said it was crazy to see that. Glad he seems okay. And she actually brought up kind of the fitness and the fit pregnancy thing. She's a pretty new mom. So then it kind of opened the door for me to ask, hope you've been able to stay active with baby. She was like an Ironman triathlete before she had kids, but then faced some injuries too. So, I knew that about her, which is why I kind of took the conversation that way. And she kind of opened up that she's slowly getting back to it. It's taking time. But again, we've opened that door and had that conversation. And so then because she did say she's slowly getting back into it, taking time and whatnot, I just kind of connected with her again and then said, if you're looking for a group to help get a routine going, let me know. Again, we haven't talked since, but I know that door is open. So if something else comes up that sounds like a good fit, I've opened that door and I can go back and follow up with her later. I think that was the last one there. I think we've gone through all of these, so I'll share some of those too. But so that was just kind of some of the conversations I've had lately. They don't all go from forming to inviting. Those are all people that I have connected with in the past. But that's kind of how I try to involve being active in the conversation. I think that's everything on my random note sheet. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free.
I do. I'm full of them tonight, I guess.
Go for it.
So you've been referencing your list, and I have recently started doing lists because I've recently started being active in inviting and getting over that fear. But my list is now the most confusing thing I ever had. So I was curious how you organize yours, because now mine is like tattered and torn and just a mess. So I was just curious how you organized yours, so maybe I can figure out a different way.
Not well. I'm in the process. Like I said, I quit.
Okay, because
kind of.
Like my pages are ripping out. Sawyer stepped on it. There's coffee on it.
I
can't read half my writing.
like some Google spreadsheets because I do work from all over the place and I can access that anywhere, but I'm not sure that I like that. I also have a notebook where I've done a lot of like name dumps and kind of putting them down. Honestly, my lists right now are these lists in my notebook, and then I save them in here unless I've moved them somewhere, the name somewhere else. So if I'm like, I need to follow up with people, I can go back and look at, okay, who did I connect with or who did I invite in the past and kind of see them in here. If I know, for example, sometimes people will tell you like, now's not a good time, follow up with me in a couple months or check with me after the school year gets going. I'll put their name in my planner for that month. Like on each month page, I'll keep a list of names. Who do I want to check in with this month? Who asked me to check in with them this month? But I'm still trying to figure out the best system for myself. Unfortunately, I do not have a much more organized because I'm trying to wrap my head around if I have this master list, then do I, like in the spreadsheet, if I follow up with them, I can at least put the date that I follow up with them on a follow-up tab. So I'm kind of leaning towards the spreadsheet route, but I don't, I have a lot of lists in a lot of places right now too.
I'll be really honest and say that like when I first started, I think probably when I had just become a diamond coach, I decided to track people. And so I literally created like an Excel spreadsheet that had like my leads, my customers, my coaches, everything. And I literally about drove myself insane with it because as your business grows, your list grows and tracking that is just like a second job. Like, I mean, it's like, am I going to hit Success Club or am I going to track all the people that I talk to, right? And I totally understand that. So I think you think, Jackie, that you don't sound organized, but I think you actually are pretty organized for what it is you're doing. So the way I would kind of encapsulate this for you guys is on a monthly basis, you should be starting with some sort of list, right? Like at the beginning of each month, everybody starts at 0. You should be thinking, who do I want to talk to this month? Maybe that means creating a list, a total list. If you're thinking you're going to reach out, like Jackie, the picture that you showed of your connect, invite, follow up, check in, right? That grid that you created. If you're planning on connecting with 2, inviting 2, following up with 2, and checking in with 2 every day, then that's all you need to know, right? Like who am I going to be talking to tomorrow? And then I like the idea of keeping it all in one notebook. And then, like, okay, can I flip through here? Who do I maybe need to touch base with? Who's resurfacing. So I think that's actually a really good plan. That's very similar. I have a little whiteboard on my desk. It's like a stand-up whiteboard. And every month I just write down like 10, 15, sometimes 20 names of people that I've been talking to or forming with or whatever. And then they're sort of in the front of my mind. So then those are the people that I'm following up with, I'm checking in on, and then I'm trying to also cultivate new relationships as well. So if you tried to track everybody, so if you're thinking like, oh, I must need to have like, what is it called? Google Streak or like a huge Excel spreadsheet. There's probably a lot of coaches in the network that'll say, yes, you do need that. But I'm here to tell you that it is a huge task to try to track all of that. So as long as you're having enough conversations and you're tracking the ones that you're having currently in the current month. And what I like to do is if I get somebody who gives me a not right now, I literally will just decide in my head on a follow-up date for them. So if they're like, oh, not right now, school's getting kind of crazy, whatever, then I'll just say like in my head, okay, I probably should follow up with them in like end of September when school's settled down, whatever. And then I'll just literally just put their name in my planner. Like if you look at my month calendar, you'll see just a bunch of names written in different dates because that's just a day that I gave myself to follow up with that person. So that's the way I do it. Sounds very similar to what Jack did.
Laura introduced me to this this planner that's, I can't remember what it's called, but it's really cool. But I write like the list of the people that I'm talking to in the day. It's like you're supposed to write like your schedule, but I find I like a Google Calendar to put my actual schedule in. And then I put the names in here bullet journal style. I don't know if you guys have ever done a bullet journal, but then I put like an arrow if I'm moving, if I'm going to talk to them a different day. I put an X if I've invited them, and I cross them out if they turn out to be a Beachbody coach. So I'm like, oh, no, not you. Sorry. I can't remember the names of all the people on the team. I'm like, oh, wait, you're on my you're on our team. Watching all my posts. So anyway, that's been helping me. My problem is I turn the page and then I forget all the tools. So that's why the bullet thing is new for me. Is it means I'm going to move them on to like the next month or whatever, or the next page. But I love this quadrant thing. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, actually, you had asked earlier like where I moved names to, and I started like if I've done everything on there and I put the names onto these other lists that I had, tearing the pages out. Clearly, I have not done that for a while, and it is easier to just have it in the notebook so that I can go, okay, I don't have anybody to fill out books today, and I can flip through and be like, oh, I invited these people and I forgot about them, because I do. Or honestly, just scrolling through my Facebook Messenger and saying, okay, I had a big eye opener tonight. I scrolled through find screenshots and I was like, oh, all these people I messaged didn't respond. And so usually the next thing that I'll do, because I have found more and more people are moving to Instagram, so they're not seeing my Facebook messages. If they're active on Instagram, I did a couple of these yesterday where I sent, hey, send this message about the program. Not sure that you saw it. And I had a couple of responses from there like, oh, sorry, I don't use Facebook Messenger. I didn't see it. So
can you access Instagram from your computer?
You can't do messaging from your computer. You can access and see posts I've seen, but you can't do stories and messaging from your computer.
So all the messaging has to take place through your.
The reason I love Facebook Messenger is because I prefer to do it on the computer where I can type, but Instagram you can't. That I find.
This is super useful. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah,
I will share out all the other things wherever you want me to, Jenny.
So hopefully you guys see, like, does everybody understand why, I guess I'll say two things. One is, did anybody feel like, I know that we kind of just briefly looked at what she was saying to people, and I know you're going to share your scripts with us too. But does anybody feel like when they were reading what she says that any of it was icky or salesy at all? Like, I felt like it sounded like everything that she was writing sounded like a genuine friend would send me this message, right? So I wanted to point that out. And then secondly, just this overall system of having sort of a list of people to be connecting with, to be checking in with, to be inviting, having these easy to access scripts that she can use for her Lift 4 group or To Be Mindset, or whatever it is she's doing. I love the focus on one individual program at one time. The fact that you've put that in your Google Drive and you can just copy and paste it if you're on the go. I mean, because you work full time, you're up at 4:15 every day. Like, this girl is hustling. Like, you might not know that about her. So I just want to mention the fact that she's not, when she says she's not sleeping, she means she's really probably not sleeping. So she's busy and she's on the go. So if she can make a way to with this grid, right, of like connecting with a few people a day, having that list, keeping those conversations casual and authentic. And the thing that I want to point out is she's consistently has been at the top of our leaderboard for Success Club and for volume. I just actually, while we were having this tonight, my assistant sent me our volume numbers for this week, and she's in the top 2 volume earners again for the team. So that doesn't happen just because like you're lucky, right? And because you're posting on your Facebook and hoping people are going to reach out to you. Like, this has been a very solid, consistent effort from Jackie for probably at least since January, like 8 months, 10 months that I've seen of just her like diligence behind the scenes to make sure that she's connecting with enough people. So I think too often coaches, whether they've been in the business 10 years or 10 minutes, they rely on their social brand. Like, they think like, oh, I am inviting, I'm making social media posts occasionally, or I am talking to people, but really the conversations they're having are just forming conversations. And their social brand, they're not doing enough of it, or they're not inviting enough of it there either, but they're not having like enough like conversations that matter, right? And these conversations that she's been sharing with you and the scripts that she's using, that's why they work, because she is facilitating and leading that conversation. It directly ties into the webinar I did 3 weeks ago on becoming a master of conversations. Like, you are in charge of that conversation. The one that you just shared with, where you use the phrase fit group. I like that. I also like that you said, like, you started the conversation with, what do you do to stay sane? I also like that you kind of tied that back in later with like, well, thanks to my fit groups, like, that's what keeps me sane, right? And so you planted that seed. There's a chance she could have come back and said tell me more about your fit groups, right? But she didn't, and you didn't just settle for that and say like, okay, well, I planted the seed and she didn't take the bait, so we'll just keep forming. And I think a lot of people in that position would have just kept forming. But instead, you found her pain point. You kept asking questions, you kept forming, you got to the root of what you could invite to. And then when she said she struggles with accountability and routine, you're like, bam, I know exactly how I can serve her now. Does that make sense? So just wanted to kind of call attention to that as well. Now, last but not least, and then we can take any last minute questions for people who want to hang on here for like 2 more seconds. I have 2 tips for you guys. One is there's a podcast that I've recently become a huge fan of. It is Building a Story Brand with Donald Miller. And some of them, like 80% of them have been awesome. A couple of them have not been, but that's how it is with every podcast. But there's a podcast that is no longer in my queue because I listened to it, so I can't tell you the name of it, but it's one that he did with Michael Stanier, Stanier. He's the author of this book called The Coaching Habit. I've owned this book now for over a year, and I've not read it myself. But after hearing that podcast, I want to read it. It's a little bit more geared toward coaching people, so like coaching coaches, than it is about coaching customers. But I think that there are still really great tips in here, even for those of you who are just looking to recruit customers, right? So, but the reason I'm sharing this is because he talks about how the number one thing we should be doing as coaches, so he's talking about life coaches, health coaches, whatever, is we should be asking questions. And the questions that we ask should really just be a rephrasing of the question or the statement that's already been stated. So you guys know, those of you guys have done masterminds with us, with Amy, you know that usually I know what she's going to ask before she asks it. And it's because I've been life coached enough by now from her that like I know what she's going to say, and she's going to say what I just said. So if I say something like, I just don't know what it is that's keeping me from, creating a power hour and sticking to it, then all she's going to say is, well, what do you think it is that's keeping you from creating a power hour and sticking to it? She's going to like rephrase my statement into a question. And his awesome tip, I think, was he said that most coaches stop there. And so the person answers and then they go on to the next question. And he said that his number one tip is after the person answers the question to provide a pause and then to say, and what else? Okay. I think that summarizes exactly the example that Jackie just showed, right? Like she didn't necessarily use the words and what else. That's something that you could probably say more so in person than you can on social media. But I love that she kind of was just like, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. Like she just kept digging and asking questions. So that's a great resource. That podcast is awesome. The book is cool too. I'm getting ready to start it. It's going on my nightstand tonight because I just finished Girl Wash Your Face. And then also one thing I just heard today on a Gary Vaynerchuk podcast is this whole concept of, it was actually a fitness professional that was asking like, how do I become a rock star fitness professional? Like she said that she builds communities online, kind of sounded similar to what we do. She's like a virtual trainer. And he said that you can't, like you basically need a balance of hustle. In his terminology, it was invites, right? Like hustling for your clients, like asking them to join you, asking them for the membership or the whatever, like what we, challenge groups, asking people to join a challenge group. And you also need the brand. It's like 50-50. You got to be representing the brand on your social, and you've got to be reaching out and inviting people. And usually what I find is that someone might be really good at the reaching out, but they don't really show themselves through their brand, or vice versa. So be thinking kind of like, after hearing what Jackie just shared tonight, how could you improve your invitation skills? How could you make sure that those two things in your business are equal, that you're branding yourself as a health and fitness professional or whatever it is you want to brand yourself as in this business? And how are you also reaching out to people and inviting? Because when those two things align, that's when magic happens in your business. That's why we're seeing Abby consistently rocking her business at the top of Success Club 20, 30, whatever she's been doing. It's because she's been doing this consistently for so long, but she's been rocking both pieces. She's been consistent in her branding, and she's been consistent in her invitations. And both of them over time have surmounted to this magical experience in her business. So just wanted to share that because I think all of that kind of happened today in my PD for a reason, especially after hearing Jackie. I know you guys all get up early tomorrow, so I know I want to be mindful of your evening. Are there any last minute questions? Katie was raising her hand, physically raising her hand. So go ahead.
Your teachers. One more quick question is, since you are so limited with time, how do you keep from getting overwhelmed with responses? Like, I'm really good at sending messages, and I'm awful at getting backlogged in, like, now they all responded back, and I'm like, holy fuck, how do I, sorry, my son is right there. How do I, like, keep up with it? I get really overwhelmed, and then I, like, don't even want to open any messages because I feel like that sucks away all of my time for doing anything else.
I have found with responding to messages, I used to always try to get, the second somebody responded to me, like, on my phone, respond to them. And my first kind of eye-opener to that, I think, is as my child gets older, her obsession with phones is getting worse. And so my husband and I are trying to be really conscious of not jumping every time the phone dings and not being on it. So that kind of catalyzed this, but I'm really trying to not respond to messages until I have time to sit down and respond to messages, because I want to be able to give information and have conversations. So rather than trying to, okay, I have 3 minutes, I'm going to respond to 2 people. As soon as, and I've also run into the problem that as soon as I read it and it's not marked as unread, and I forget about it and not respond. So I have tried to not, if I see there's a message there and you can see like the snippet of it, right, when they reply, I will not read it until I know I have time to sit down and respond to it, because I'm the person who in my email inbox, I mark it unread until I do something about it, and I can't do that with Facebook Messenger. So I keep it unread until I have time to actually sit down and respond to messages. And I try to force myself to do all of my inviting first. So maybe somebody messages me at 9 in the morning, and if I'm at work, I don't have time to respond that until at best when I'm sitting in the parking lot before I drive home. But frankly, I have more important, I've been trying to prioritize more important things to do at that time. If I don't have anything else I need to do, maybe I'll spend 15 minutes responding to messages in the parking lot. But I also know that then I might respond to you at 3:45 or 4 o'clock, but I can't, if you say something else, I can't follow up until Holly goes to bed at 8 or so. So I try to save those for at night, or even I put my phone on Do Not Disturb at 8:30, so I may or may not respond to messages after that. So sometimes it's in the morning, but really not doing any of it until I have a solid chunk of time to do it, if that helps.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to add to that that I used to get really overwhelmed with messages because I would do things. I told you guys before that I still work my business in like blitzes. So I'll send a bunch of invitations, and then on Fridays I'll do a follow-up blitz, and I'll follow up with like 20 or 30 people at one time. So that's just how I prefer to do it. Like all my invites to certain people, all my follow-ups to certain people. And I used to get really overwhelmed. I'd be like, oh, this is going to take me forever to go through these messages. And I realized that the mentality behind that overwhelm was because I thought I needed to therefore move that person from wherever we were in the conversation to sale. When the truth is, I really just had to take that conversation to the next step, right? Like, so the overwhelm could be because you're like, oh my gosh, I have 10 messages in my inbox. How am I going to get all these people to sale, right? When really it's like, let me just go through these one by one. What's the response or question that needs to be asked or stated next? And that's all I'm going to send. So I've told you guys before that I treat my messenger kind of like the old school AOL instant messenger, right? So like when someone would be like, hey girl, what's up? You'd be like, hey girl, what's up? Heading to class. And they'd be like, cool, you want to go to Pizza Hut? You'd be like, yeah, sounds good, right? That's how I handle my Facebook Messenger, is very, very much like that, like back and forth. I don't think of it as my email inbox. I don't think of it as, okay, now I need to sit down and write this person an email, right? So I think that could be a total shift in your mentality. If you're feeling overwhelmed with your messenger, it's probably because you might be talking too much, or you might be thinking too many steps ahead. Just open the message. And if they say, like, well, how much does it cost? Or when does the group start, right? You could easily just be like, the group starts on Monday, August 20th. I'm happy to provide more details about the cost. First, let me ask you, what's your ultimate goal? You close out of that conversation, you go to the next one, right? So just take the conversation to the next, reciprocating statement, and that's it.
And Katie, that's also a place, Jenny reminded me of that I use Google Keep, like for the number of times that I've typed out my message after somebody submits a share card. I'm so sick of typing. Like, it's the same thing to everybody. Like, everything looks great on my end. You'll have access to BOD. You should be getting an email to that. Like, that's saved in Google Keep. So as soon as I see that share card come through, copy, paste. Like, it is a generic message, but here's the next steps that you need. I have a whole list of when people express interest in a group, like my little what I tell them about a challenge group. So having some of those in Google Keep, I can access on my phone and on my computer. So no matter where I am, some of those, like, you just need the same information that anybody would need. That saves some time too.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I was going to interrupt you earlier, but you were on a roll, so I just let you go. But I've got to come back to Sarah here and just say, Sarah has gone totally personal on her social here recently, for those of you guys who don't follow her or friends with her. And so you made that comment about, like, just recently you feel like you're kind of getting a little bit more personal on your Facebook. I was gonna like hop in and say something, but I know Jackie was on a roll and you guys were talking, so I didn't interrupt. But that has been like, I have literally been like, when I see your post, like, I'm like, this is it. Like, I feel like you are so close to just your own personal breakthrough. Not really close to it. I think you're experiencing it, and it's cool to witness that, especially having been working with you for a few years and having you in the masterminds. And that really just goes to prove what I was just saying about the personal brand and the invitations, right? Like, you have been sending invitations, but there's been a little bit of a piece of you and your story that you've not been sharing. And so now that you're kind of breaking through that, right? Jennifer too, we talked about this on our call this week too. Like, some of you guys are kind of having this experience where now you're like sharing more about your life. And for whatever reason, you're going to see this huge breakthrough. It's a personal growth thing, but it totally applies to your business too. And that matters. So I just wanted to shout that out and say, like, for many of you on this call and otherwise the past like 2 weeks, I've been like that's me when I open my Facebook. I'm like, yes, yes. So kudos to you guys who are having the guts to be authentically you on your social. Okay, y'all. Well, I'm going to bed. I know you guys are too, because a lot of you guys get up earlier than I do. So thank you guys so much for hopping on here. This is good stuff. I've got lots of notes. Jackie, don't feel like you have to do it tonight, but sometime before the weekend, if you will share those scripts in the team page, that would be awesome. But you guys, thanks for hopping on here and sticking on here for as long as you did. I will see you guys next week. Have a great night.